Welcome back. So continuing on with immigration. So we know that there's challenges back home. There's a reason why they were pushed out, or perhaps reasons why they were drawn in. $10 for 60 hectares? That's a huge deal. Now, was it all wonderful, good, ready to farm land? Probably not. I don't know. They were also told about the wonderful weather that we have here, such as the about 7 months of winter. Hard, harsh, cold winter. So now that they got here, what were some of their challenges? Well, they weren't all farmers. Many of them were factory workers, or help around the house, or teachers, bankers, lawyers, professional jobs that would be typically in an office. And when they got here, the only job that was readily available was farming. And so you had to then learn on the fly. And so many of them, their biggest challenge was they had no idea how to farm. But not only that, well, they had to fight drought or flooding. Many of them faced discrimination. If you were in a community where there weren't a lot of you or people of your cultural or ethnic group, you would be discriminated against. Back then, there was also not a lot of workers' rights. So employers had all the power and employees had none of the power. Why is that? Well, if you're an employer, you only have, let's say, so many positions to be able to have to hire employees. But there are hundreds of employees or hundreds of potential employees right now. Everyone's looking for jobs. Not only that, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of potential new employees coming in every day, every month, every year. And so who had all the power in this situation? The employers. And so if you wanted to keep your job as an employee, well, you kind of just let the employer do what he or she wanted to do. And this was not a fair situation. And also, there was a high cost in farming. And so if you wanted to, let's say, get a tractor or get a new equipment, well, you had to pay for that. And especially if you don't have any farming experience, having to now shell out even more money for equipment was a serious challenge for them. And so the immigrants came up with a lot of interesting and creative ways to deal with these situations, which we're going to look at in a second. So who is discriminated against? Well, everyone. Yes, their preferred people, or the preferred group of people that the Canadian government wanted at the time, were people of British descent. If you came from the British Isles or the United Kingdom, well, you were treated as first-class citizens, meaning you faced almost no discrimination. It was very easy to fit in. But let's say you came from Western Europe, so France, even Belgium. Well, you were treated fairly well. If you were from Western Europe, Germany, Poland, the Ukraine, you were kind of treated as a second-class citizen. So you were accepted, but you're kind of step below. Well, who was treated below them? Well, African Americans, freed slaves. There was actually a paper, I think I'll have an example there for you, that describes them as a menace and troublesome. Many people just thought that they could not survive the harsh Canadian winter. And because of this discrimination, do you think these freed slaves, these people who, these African American people came and stayed? Many left. Some stayed. And last but not least, we have of Asian descent. So there was the Chinese workers who were instrumental and vital to the creation of the railway. But as soon as it's done, the Canadian government wanted them back. So much so that they put a Chinese head tax. This was a tax essentially an extra fee that the government added on every Chinese person coming in. And so if you, these Chinese men, most of them were Chinese men that were workers, well, they wanted to stay, but most of them had families back home. So they had a wife and they had a couple kids. Well, you would want them to be with you. And so the Canadian government, on top of the regular immigration fees and all the other things that they had to pay for, put a Chinese head tax on the wife and the kids. And it was an exorbitant amount of money. It was so much so that it would take them to pay for one person like a couple months. It was extremely unfair and designed so that these Chinese men would go back to China rather than bring their family here. The home children. Well, who were the home children? There are actually a large group of children that were sent to Canada, willingly and most unwillingly. Well, they were children that lived in the slums of London. Well, what is a slum? It's the poorest place in the area. The city, usually there wasn't a lot of proper housing or water or facilities. So social reformers, they'd be people that were trying to help. The immigrants, they were people trying to help society, thought and saw all these orphans and thought, you know what, they don't have parents, no one wants them here, they are just making trouble. They said, well, you know what, it would be better for these children to be in Canada, where they will get jobs, there'll be people that will take care of them, and they'll just have more opportunities. And so all these social reformers thought, yay, this is a great idea, let's do it. So they rounded up all these slum children. Thousands were sent to Canada. Many were between the ages of 8 and 14 years old. Some were as young as 4 years old. Now, some of them found work and were adopted by loving families. And they had a great transition into the new world. Many of them, though, unfortunately, found their ways in bad homes and they were treated badly. They were treated as slaves. They were treated as outsiders. And it didn't fare out so well for them. And so the home children was an interesting kind of experiment, and people were trying to make things better for these children, but were they? What do you think? Put yourself in the social reformer's shoe. Would you send your child away for a chance of a better life? Yes or no? Why or why not? What would you do?